I design theatrical events. That, for example, is the facade of the Museum of Contemporary Art. You sat in the plaza and watched a graphic novel unfold in the facade. This was behind the Museum of Science and Industry. It was a show on the lagoon. And this was in Pingtom Park in Chinatown, just north of Chinatown. I didn't make this show, but I wish I had. I make these events because I think they're really cool and great. And when I close my eyes and try to think about what I would want to do on a free Saturday or Sunday afternoon, I try to make the event that I would want to go to. But I also make them because I think they do something powerful. I think that they ignite the creative spirit and the creative mind and creative thinking. And I think that creative thinking is an imperative right now as we face some of the difficulties that we are facing. And I make them because they activate public space and they engender a kind of community in that public space. And in that public space, and as they ignite creativity, they breed a sense of potential and a sense that we are responsible to one another, that we are connected to one another, we are mutually obliged to one another as we face the future as a human race. And I make them because I think in some ways they reveal the best parts of ourselves. And I'm talking about it as though I make them, but I don't actually make them. A lot of people make them. You know, if the old model of making art was, say, let's say Michelangelo goes and he sees a block of marble and he decides that what he needs to do, he supposedly could see the shape that he needed to extract out of that marble. And he would do everything in his power, his physical power, to find that form that he saw. This is not at all the model by which I work. The model I work in is I have an idea, a principle, a notion, and then I begin a conversation. And that conversation is with the material that I'm working with, it's with the people that I'm working with, it's with the site that I'm working with, and it's with the community in which that spectacle will happen. I had the opportunity to think for a year in Boston about a project that I wanted to do. And I thought about the Great Chicago Fire Festival. And I don't want to give away the conclusion to any of you who don't already know, but it didn't work out exactly as I had planned, and we're going to talk about that. But before I do, I thought I should tell you at least, what I did plan. And what I did plan was that art would sit at the center of a conversation. It would sit at the center of conversation between artists and government agencies and funders and thought leaders and community partners, and we would get together and think about how to create a new signature event for the city of Chicago. What would Chicago's Mardi Gras look like? What would Chicago's Running of the Bulls be? And the thought was that we had to make sure that we celebrated our unique history, our unique people, and our unique culture. And so we came up with an idea that we would go into the neighborhoods and gather stories of grit and resilience. We would create summer celebrations that were, in some ways, discoveries of the stories of grit and resilience within those neighborhoods. And we created a thing we called the photo booth, and the photo booth was built into the back of a horse trailer, and it was designed by a premier world-class photographer who's done Esquire magazine covers. And we took photographs and gathered stories there, and we disseminated them immediately in the form of stickers and buttons and put them onto a website. And we also made a grill machine, and the grill machine distributed food and was a performance platform, and we gathered talent from within those neighborhoods, and spoken word poetry was performed alongside dance, alongside music and a DJ booth, and people came out to their public parks and celebrated together and heard from our community-based partners and about their missions and what they were doing in the world. And it was a big celebration, and lots of people came, and that's a picture of the Cyclone Grill, we called it. And we wrote a book because we wanted to be a part of a citywide conversation about grit and resilience, and Tria Smith, my wife is in the audience, wrote a book, and we illustrated it, and it was about the Great Chicago Fire, and it was distributed to every third grader in the city of Chicago so that there would be a citywide conversation about grit and resilience. And October 4th came, and the idea was that we would have a community bazaar, we would have kiosks set up, and we would have partners from all of our 15 neighborhoods selling merchandise at those kiosks, and that happened, and that was amazing, and they moved a lot of merchandise, and they were very excited. And here's a site map that showed where these 3 houses would be, and the kiosks up top, and 2 performance stages, one in AMA Plaza and one in Pioneer Court, where there was dance performances from some of the talent that we discovered in the course of the summer in the neighborhoods, and also spoken word poetry, and another stage for music. And then there was going to be a fire finale, and we began by honoring some of the city's first responders, and we lit these fire buoys, and they descended to the river, and they were met by other fire buoys being rowed by volunteer kayakers, and the steamship came in carrying fire, and the steamship's job was to ignite the houses that had been paraded through the downtown area and to set them ablaze. And the fires did not ignite. And we all sat there wondering what was going to happen. And what happened was the revelation did not happen, and the spectacle of extinguishing the fires did not happen. But we did get to skip, after some torturous period of time, to the fireworks themselves, which were unbelievable, and then to the denouement, the kind of parade of these projection boats down the river that featured the faces of the neighborhood residents who had worked with us over the course of the summer to make this spectacle. So I want to ask you, just for a moment, to indulge me in this. I want you to think of a moment in which you were utterly humiliated. Like, recall for yourself one of those times when you felt your face go flush or your stomach drop. I don't know what the clinical vision or definition of humiliation is, but I have a sense that it is somewhere about the disjuncture between how you think you should be seen and how you think you are being seen. And the greater the distance between those two things is the greater humiliation that you are feeling. I can tell you that the distance between those two for me in the moment that the fire did not ignite was chasmatic. It was a canyon, and I felt horribly humiliated. This was the vision of what I thought I should be seen as. Great press leading up to this thing. We were going to do this amazing thing. And this was the vision of how I was sure I was, in fact, being seen. Now, we all know that the press can be cruel and reductive and diminish a thing down to an essence that is really not what it was at all. In this case, we had spent a long time promoting this central spectacle element of these fires on the houses burning. We called to ourselves the disaster of these things not burning. And I'll just say quickly that the answer of why they didn't burn is not very interesting. It's a totally technical thing that had to do with how tightly regulated the ignition system was and how much moisture was in the air and all that stuff. And we analyzed that because failure is an opportunity to understand how to move forward and to understand that we looked at the failure in that context. But before I get there, I just want to say the next week, I was very focused on the idea of failure, as you might imagine. this headline came out. Can the Navy's $12 billion stealth destroyer float? Literally, they weren't sure if it was going to float. And then a friend sent me this about NASA's rocket exploding, suggesting that perhaps I engage NASA in the ignition system program for next year. And then, of course, Richard Branson's efforts came to a crash and a tragic conclusion of actually killing somebody. And I began to think about the way that in the fields of technology and science, we understand failure as a step toward completion. That you don't finish anything without having failed a few times first. But in the arts, somehow, we avoid that. We believe that we have to put forward only a finished product. Thought about Steve Jobs and his famous Next that nobody really talks much about. And I thought about this thing, the Hadron Collider. Do you guys know about the Hadron Collider? This thing is amazing, right? I mean, the entire field of physics was focused on this machine, a $6 billion machine constructed by 10,000 scientists from 100 different countries, and it was literally shut down by a bird dropping a piece of bread. But they stepped forward and they triggered it in front of a huge audience of international media, and it broke again. But they stepped forward and they went again and they invested another $1 billion into this project, and it ultimately revealed almost nothing, but it revealed enough that they're going to step forward again. So this way of understanding failure and surprise as the means of stepping forward was how I decided we needed to proceed. Because yes, we failed at a central element of this thing, but, and that is our action report that we turned into the city. But a bunch of other things did happen, and it's important to understand those things. This happened, and that happened, and these pictures were taken and captured, and these people danced to an audience that they never thought they would dance to before, and they were downtown and they loved it. And the mayor lit a cauldron standing next to the After School Matters students who built that cauldron. And this steamship came down, and it was amazing. And those houses were cool. And that little fire did happen. And those fireworks happened, and they were great. And then that denouement happened. And that happened. 30,000 people, and that to me is a crazy estimate. It was way more like, in my opinion, 70 to 80,000 people. Yes, somebody confirms. And then some. And it was amazing. The spirit was there. People were hungry for it, and the concept was proven. We were on the right track. And so we will proceed. We will move on. We had done something unique. We had done something that is not, I don't think, often done in the arts, which is the arts tried to twist together the city's infrastructure, the city's social structure, and the cultural fabric of the city. And we had taken many of the right steps, but failed at a crucial one. Oops. Failure is an indication of effort. It is the grace that leads to the fall, that leads to the standing up again and trying. Failure indicates the promise of something new. I think in some ways what we're doing is changing the model, right? I mean, this is totally grandiose, but I'll just say it anyway. Because somebody said earlier, audacity and humility. I think the audacious thing to say would be, you know, for a long time, art was concerned with the glorification of God. Those amazing churches, the higher they reached to the Lord, the better they were. The frescoes painted on their walls and their ceilings. It was concerned with beauty. And then, it's very cursory, we discovered the unconscious, right? We discovered this idea that inside each individual was some dark, mysterious matter that was actually motivating that person and making things happen that they did not understand and couldn't possibly get entirely a hold of. And so the arts went into that, and they began to discover and literally try to bring out from the human body the unconscious. And so you have the writing of Bukowski and James Joyce, and you have the painting of Francis Bacon and Jackson Pollock, and that is super interesting. And that's where we get to this idea of the artist drawing from themselves. But there is something new. There is a new model that is not the artist drawing from themselves, but the artist being concerned about something outside of themselves. How are we going to live together harmoniously in a world of limited resources? And this is the concern of our work. And this is why it's a conversation. And this is why I welcome you into that conversation. Thank you.